They had conquered 1,000 worlds, erased 100 civilizations, and catalogued 10,000 more that had surrendered without a single shot fired. Entire species were remembered only as footnotes, brief entries in cold archival memory, reduced to population numbers, atmospheric compositions, and extinction dates. The Galactic Empire had perfected conquests so thoroughly that war had become routine, almost administrative. Planets fell the way paperwork was filed. Resistance was an anomaly. Fear was a constant. And surrender, an inevitability. That was why Earth confused them. From orbit, the planet looked unimpressive. Blue and green, yes, but fragile. Chaotic weather systems. No unified planetary shield. No energy lattice. No stellar defenses. Its species had not even achieved stable faster-than-light travel. They still fought among themselves. Still polluted their own biosphere. Still argued endlessly over borders, beliefs, and symbols that meant nothing to the stars. By why every metric the Empire used, Earth was weak, and so the Empire did what it had always done. It underestimated them. The Galactic Empire, known in its own language as the Dominion of Order, had existed for longer than most stars in its core systems. Its civilization was built not on passion or faith, but on calculation. Emotion had been optimized out of governance generations ago. Decisions were made by predictive consensus engines, ancient intelligences fed with the outcomes of millions of past invasions. Every new world was reduced to probabilities long before the first ship entered orbit. Resistance index, technological parity, psychological stability, environmental hostility. Earth scored low on all of them. Its dominant species, humanity, was classified as erratic, divided, and biologically fragile. Individually weak, short-lived, emotionally volatile. Their history was a catalogue of self-inflicted suffering, wars, plagues, ecological collapse narrowly avoided time and again not through wisdom, but accident. The Empire had faced species like this before. They never lasted long. The invasion proposal was logged, reviewed, and approved in less than 8 minutes. Earth was designated a Class 3 acquisition world. Not even worthy of a full battle fleet. A single expeditionary force would suffice. Standard procedure, minimal expenditure. The invasion timetable predicted total planetary compliance within 72 local hours. It was not arrogance. It was experience. The Empire's observation arrays unfolded silently beyond the outer planets of the Sol system. Long before humans noticed anything unusual, every satellite, broadcast frequency, and digital transmission on Earth had already been mapped. Languages decoded. Cultural artifacts analyzed. Military installations marked. What the analysts found only confirmed their assumptions. Humans were noisy. Their electromagnetic spectrum was saturated with constant transmissions, entertainment, arguments, advertisements, misinformation. A civilization that never stopped talking, never stopped fighting itself. Their networks were chaotic, insecure, riddled with contradictions. Their governments distrusted one another more than any external threat. The Empire's consensus engines ran the numbers: probability of unified resistance, negligible; probability of immediate surrender after orbital demonstration, high probability of long-term insurgency, statistically irrelevant, and yet, buried deep in the data, flagged so low it barely registered, was an anomaly, not technological, not military, biological. One of the Empire's xenobiological subroutines had flagged a cluster of Earth's native life forms as unusual. Not dangerous in the conventional sense. Not apex predators by galactic standards. But resistant. Excessively so, creatures that fought when escape was logical. That attacked larger predators despite overwhelming disadvantage. That survived injuries that should have ended them. That adapted not by evolving new strengths, but by refusing to acknowledge weakness. The subroutine attached a primitive translation from human databases to one of these creatures, honey badger. The file was archived without comment. On Earth, the first sign that something was wrong came not from governments or militaries, but from astronomers, quiet alerts buried beneath layers of social media noise. Objects that were not asteroids. Movements that did not fit known trajectories. Patterns that suggested intention to be why the time global leaders were briefed, it was already too late. The empire made first contact not with weapons, but with certainty. Every screen on Earth, phones, televisions, digital billboards, emergency systems, flickered in unison. The signal cut through every network simultaneously, overriding encryption with effortless precision. A single message, translated instantly into every human language, appeared across the planet. Planetary designation, Earth. This system is now under the authority of the Galactic Empire. Resistance is unnecessary. Compliance will ensure survival. Surrender all military assets and await further instruction. The Empire expected panic. They expected fear. They expected chaos, then submission. What they got instead was noise. Humans did not respond with a single voice. There was no unified reply. Governments argued with each other before addressing the message at all. Some leaders demanded verification. Others declared it a hoax. Still others saw opportunity, believing they could negotiate favorable terms. Civilians reacted differently. Some panicked. Some prayed. Some laughed. Memes appeared within minutes. Edited images mocking the message. Jokes comparing the invasion to old science fiction films. Videos of people filming the sky with sarcastic commentary. News networks filled the airwaves with speculation, denial, and endless debate. To the empire, it looked like collapse. Their analysts interpreted the response as psychological fragmentation, a species incapable of coordinated reaction. Exactly as predicted, and yet, something about the data didn't sit right. While public broadcasts were chaotic, other signals told a different story. Military communications spiked, then went silent. Civil defense networks activated without announcement. Infrastructure systems shifted into emergency modes not broadcast to the public. Humans were not uniting loudly. They were preparing quietly. The invasion began at dawn over the Pacific. Empire ships descended through the atmosphere like falling stars, sleek, angular constructs of dark metal that ignored air resistance as if physics itself deferred to them. They did not fire immediately. There was no need. The Empire preferred surrender intact, cities undamaged, populations manageable, orbital platforms disabled, satellites with precision bursts. GPS failed. Communications flickered. Power grids in key regions shut down simultaneously. Still, no surrender came. The Empire's ground forces deployed next, towering constructs and biomechanical soldiers engineered for intimidation as much as combat. They landed outside major population centers, forming visible encampments meant to demonstrate inevitability. Another broadcast followed. Planetary resistance is futile. Your defenses are obsolete. Lay down arms and remain in place. This time, humans answered, not with a transmission, with gunfire. The first shots were insignificant by galactic standards. Primitive kinetic weapons, chemically propelled, wildly inaccurate against energy shields. They did almost no damage. Empire soldiers barely registered the impacts, but the act itself was unexpected. The humans firing knew they would die. They fired anyway. Empire commanders classified the incidents as emotional outbursts. Localized defiance. A predictable reaction from an inferior species confronting extinction. The solution was simple. Apply pressure. Demonstrate superiority. Break morale. They advanced. That was when the environment turned against them. Human cities were not orderly. Streets were narrow, irregular, cluttered. Buildings were dense, asymmetrical, and full of hidden spaces. Empire troops, trained for open field domination, found themselves slowed, funneled, ambushed from angles their simulations had dismissed as tactically irrelevant. The Empire did not notice the first loss. That, in hindsight, was what unsettled its surviving analysts the most. No alarm sounded. No battle reports were filed. One of the outer logistics nodes simply failed to check in on its scheduled cycle. The automated systems flagged it as a routine malfunction, likely caused by long-distance signal degradation or internal error. A repair drone was dispatched along a pre-programmed route. It never arrived. Its disappearance was logged, downgraded in priority, and forgotten beneath layers of more pressing administrative traffic. Then another node went dark. Then three. None of them were frontline installations. None carried weapons powerful enough to warrant concern. They were fuel depots, data relays, resupply anchors that existed purely to keep the Empire's vast military machine moving smoothly across interstellar distances. They had been built with redundancy in mind, scattered across space so widely that no enemy had ever bothered targeting them. No enemy had ever needed to, until now. Imperial sensor arrays eventually detected debris fields where the nodes had once been, but the signatures were wrong. There were no signs of high-energy weapons fire, no radiation spikes consistent with no munitions, no battle formations frozen in the wreckage. The structures appeared to have been dismantled from within, as if the vacuum itself had reached inside and pulled them apart piece by piece. The Empire searched for attackers and found nothing. No fleets. No energy trails. No gravitational disturbances large enough to suggest conventional propulsion. Whatever had destroyed the nodes had done so quietly, efficiently, and without announcing its presence to the wider battlefield. For the first time since the warning transmission, a thread of unease worked its way through Imperial command. Orders were issued to increase patrol density along major supply corridors. Sensor sensitivity thresholds were lowered. The Empire's fleets, accustomed to projecting power through overwhelming visibility, began to look inward, scanning the darkness between stars with unfamiliar caution. That was when the communications failures began. Entire task groups found themselves unable to contact Central Command for minutes at a time. Then hours. Then not at all. Backup systems activated as designed, only to fail in identical ways. The Empire's network architecture, optimized for efficiency rather than resilience, struggled to adapt. Information flowed along predictable routes. Humans, it turned out, had been listening to those routes for years. Long before the first strike on Earth, human observers had mapped Imperial communications not by breaking encryption, but by studying behavior. Transmission timing. Signal prioritization. The subtle patterns that emerged when a system had grown complacent through centuries of uncontested dominance. The Empire had never needed to hide its logistics. No one had ever been able to touch them. Humans did not attack the fleets. They attacked the idea that fleets could exist without support. More nodes vanished. Then shipyards. Then data archives. Entire libraries of Imperial doctrine were erased in precise pulses that left surrounding systems untouched. The Empire attempted to reroute command authority, only to discover that the alternative pathways were already compromised. Not destroyed, but altered. Human code threaded itself through Imperial systems like a parasite that had learned exactly how much damage it could cause without revealing its full presence. The first Imperial fleet was lost without ever seeing an enemy. It ran out of fuel in deep space, far from any habitable system. Distress calls went unanswered. Life support degraded. When recovery teams finally arrived weeks later, they found ships intact, weapons cold, crews dead at their stations. No battle damage. No signs of struggle. Just silence and the unmistakable evidence of a machine that had been starved rather than slain. Panic did not spread immediately. The Empire's leadership had ruled for too long to surrender to fear at the first sign of irregularity. They reassured themselves that this was an anomaly, a coincidence, an overreaction to a minor setback. Humans were still pre-FTL in meaningful numbers, they reminded each other. Humans did not possess fleets capable of matching Imperial firepower. Humans had been struck and had not responded openly. What they failed to account for was that humans did not measure victory in destroyed ships. They measured it in removed options. As weeks passed, the Empire's civilian worlds began to feel the strain. Trade routes faltered. Automated manufacturing centers slowed without explanation. Energy shortages rippled outward from systems that had never experienced scarcity. Imperial citizens, raised on the certainty of eternal order, encountered disruption for the first time in recorded history. Rumors spread faster than official statements could contain them. Some claimed a rival empire had emerged from beyond the mapped galaxy. Others whispered of ancient machines awakening in the void. A few spoke the name of Earth, though few truly believed a single newly contacted species could be responsible for such widespread destabilization. The Empire's military council convened in emergency session. Holographic projections filled the chamber, displaying failure after failure across the empire's infrastructure. Admirals argued over strategy. Some demanded a full-scale assault on Earth, a cleansing strike that would erase the problem at its source. Others cautioned restraint, pointing out that the empire no longer possessed clear intelligence on human capabilities. The idea that Earth might be bait, a lure drawing the empire into a trap, was voiced and immediately dismissed as paranoia. The argument ended when another transmission arrived. This one did not come alone. Across hundreds of Imperial systems, displays activated simultaneously. Not hacked, not overridden, but accessed through permissions the Empire did not realize it had left exposed. The message was identical everywhere, translated perfectly into every Imperial language. Again, there were no faces. Again, the voices were calm. The humans did not threaten. They did not boast. They did not demand surrender. They spoke as if delivering a report. They listed the Imperial supply nodes that had been destroyed in the order they had fallen. They described the Empire's communications architecture with unsettling accuracy, highlighting redundancies that no longer existed. They identified fleet groups currently stranded beyond resupply range, their estimated survival times calculated down to the hour. Then the voices paused. "You taught us your rules," they said. "We learned how to break them." The message ended. Chaos followed. Imperial commanders scrambled to secure their systems, only to find that many of the tools they relied upon were compromised or unavailable. Fleets were ordered to regroup, but regrouping required fuel, coordination, and trust in communications that no longer functioned reliably. Attempts to launch a direct assault on Earth stalled before they began, not because of human defenses, but because the Empire could no longer guarantee that its ships would arrive where they were sent. The humans still did not appear. There were no triumphant broadcasts, no footage of battles, no visible armadas advancing across the stars. The absence itself became a weapon. Every unexplained malfunction, every delayed report, every missing shipment carried the unspoken implication that humans might be responsible, or worse, that they were watching. Within Imperial space, military discipline began to erode. Crews questioned orders that sent them beyond established supply lines. Captains hesitated to engage unknown contacts. Entire squadrons remained docked, unwilling to venture into a void that had become unpredictable and hostile, and through it all, human forces maintained a single, unbroken rule. No civilian targets, worlds that posed no military threat were left untouched. Population centers were spared even when disabling them would have accelerated the Empire's collapse. This restraint, incomprehensible to Imperial strategists accustomed to terror as a tool of compliance, only deepened the psychological damage. The Empire could not portray humans as monsters when the evidence contradicted the claim. It could not rally its citizens with fear of extermination when their homes still stood. What it could not escape was humiliation. The Empire, architect of countless subjugations, found itself unable to force a response from a species it had dismissed as irrelevant. Its fleets were intact but ineffective. Its authority was absolute in theory and meaningless in practice. Its enemies were invisible, methodical, and utterly uninterested in conquest. When the Empire finally sued for terms, it did so quietly. The message was sent along every channel that still functioned, stripped of arrogance and formality. The Empire offered technology, territory, political autonomy for Earth, even a seat within its ruling council. It promised never to strike human worlds again. It framed the request as mutual benefit, as cooperation, as the natural evolution of interstellar relations.